Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. You'll notice this is Daniel's voice and not Chris's because unfortunately Chris could not be here tonight. He was called into work, but the show must go on. It is the most important day of the offseason for Above Replacement Radio. My favorite, definitely my favorite for sure. And I'm continuing on a tradition that we've been doing for a few years now where we live react to the Baseball Hall of Fame, BBWAA, Hall of Fame ballot announcements. And this is a year that I've been looking forward to for, I think, since we started really breaking down the Hall of Fame in 2021, because it's a big first-year class. We have potentially 4 Hall of Famers. We have 5 people at most leaving the ballot after this year. And I'll just take you through what my predictions are as of right now. It's 6 o'clock on the dot. We're going to have Beltran in a second. We're going to have possibly Todd Helton. We're going to have possibly Joe Mauer. We're going to have possibly Billy Wagner, which is very exciting for me. Gary Sheffield is almost certainly going to be falling off the ballot. However, he is at, I believe, 75 for 74% right now, which does help out with one of my Hall of Fame hot takes that he was going to be at 70 when the results were announced. He's actually at 75 on the dot. So, Gary Sheffield, you know, it's worth being considered, but I don't think the private vote's going to come through for him. So, Adrian Beltre is going to make it. He's going to be at probably 96 to 97%, I would say. And Joe Mauer, it's so hard to predict because he's a first-year candidate. You can't go off of previous years and how the private vote and the post-election public vote will treat him. And I think he'll make it. I think he'll get like 80, maybe like high 70s, low 80s%-ish. And then lastly, or not lastly, but Todd Helton, I do think he gets in this year. He currently needs to get 67.4% of the post-election vote, and he got 65% of it last year. So I think a 2% increase will not be a problem for him. And then lastly, Billy Wagner, I think it's going to be razor thin. I do think he's going to miss by a very small amount, though. He's at 78%. He needs 71.7% of the post-election vote. He got 62% last year, and in this year, I just don't know if a 9% increase is possible. But we've seen crazier things happen, so it'll be interesting. But yeah, so those are my predictions for now. I think a lot of this year kind of went sort of the way I envisioned. Weirdly enough, with Joe Mauer, I said last year when the election happened that he was going to get in or at least get 65% of the vote. And then I kind of backtrack off of that at the beginning of this year. But I was right originally. I mean, whether he gets in or not, he's going to, I think, surprise a lot of people with how he does this year. He's going to get at least 70% of the vote at the very least, but he should get in. He will pretty comfortably get in, most likely. I think Carlos Beltran is going to see a major gain. You know, he had 46.5% of the vote last year, and he's probably going to get to 60 this year, or at least the high 50s. Andrew Jones is probably not going to gain a ton this year. He was kind of a victim of the crowded ballot this year, but I do hope that he gets, at the very least to 60%. He was at 58% last year, but I would love to see him get to 63.2%. I know that's a very random, obscure number, but that is what Scott Rowland got the year before he got elected. That's what he got in 2022. So that will be big because next year, like I said, up to 5 people leaving the ballot, and really only 2 strong first years in both CC Sabathia and, of course, Ichiro Suzuki, both of which will probably be first ballot Hall of Famers, I would say. And, Ichiro is going to be Beltre level of the vote. He's going to be a no-doubter. CC, I think, will be a little more interesting, but I do think he'll get in. So, big gains potentially next year for guys like Carlos Beltran, guys like Andrew Jones to maybe make a final push to eventually get in. I think Chase Utley is going to make big gains next year. I'll just tell you my predictions already, but I guess we're just gonna get to the results now. So I'm gonna cut this here and pick it up when they announce the vote. All right, it is 6:14 p.m. And it looks like we're getting ready.
By a very special guest for the big announcement. BK, take it away, bud.
Greg, thank you so much. I'm here with Josh Rowich, the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And Josh, I'll call it the ballot tracking era. It's only been a few years, but we've never had this kind of excitement where we have, anywhere 5 to 7 players hovering near the magic 75%.
Yeah, I think that tells you what kind of ballot we have. I mean, it really is an incredible group of players, and obviously a lot of excitement, a lot of chatter over the last few months, and it's a privilege just to be on the ballot, and we're excited for tonight.
And yet we don't know until right now. Josh, you have the honors. Take it
All right, here we go.
Thank you, Brian. Well, on behalf
Who's joining
of
Jim
Hall of Fame
Leland?
Chairman Jane Forbes Clark, our board of directors, and the entire staff here in Cooperstown, as well as Jack O'Connell of the Baseball Writers Association of America, it is my honor to announce the results of the 2024 BBWAA Hall of Fame election. I'd like to thank Mark Moran of Ernst & Young and Mike DeLisi for their assistance in tabulating the final results. And as always, we want to thank all of the writers for their participation. This year's ballot featured 26 candidates with 12 newcomers joining 14 holdovers from the 2023 ballot. In arriving at their individual decisions, the electors took into consideration the following voting criteria: the player's record, playing ability, integrity, sportsmanship, character, and contribution to the team or teams for which they played. Tonight, we are pleased to announce the addition of several new members to the Hall.
Oh, come on, it can't lag right now.
The player's record,
No way.
integrity, sportsmanship, character, and contribution to the team.
All he
or
said was
teams
several
for
new
which they
members.
played.
That means 3 or more.
Tonight, we are pleased to announce the addition of several new members to the Hall of Fame who will be inducted alongside Jim Leland at our induction ceremony on July 21st at the Clark Sports Center here in Cooperstown.
3 or 4.
Our first electee was a superstar at the plate and in the field, playing 21 seasons for the Dodgers, Mariners.
Adrian Beltre's a
Red
Hall of
Sox,
Famer. This
and
was something
Rangers.
we
Today,
knew was going to
Adrian
happen.
Beltre becomes a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. One of just 12 players in Major League history with 3,000 hits and 400 homers.
A first ballot Hall of Famer with 90 career WAR. Probably a top 5 player all time at the position. Adrian Beltre was the biggest slam dunk first year candidate we've had in a few
He became the
years.
first Dominican Republic native to reach the 3,000 hit mark, and when he retired, he had more hits than any player in Major League history born outside of the United States. A 4-time All-Star and 4-time Silver Slugger Award winner, he led the majors in homers in 2000. Elite defender, he won 5 Gold Glove Awards and 2 Platinum Glove Awards, finishing in the top 10 in his league's MVP voting in 6 different seasons. A beloved teammate and fan favorite, he reached the postseason 5 times, winning the 2011 American League pennant with the Texas Rangers. Adrian Beltre, our second member of the class of 2024, played his entire career with one team, his hometown Minnesota Twins.
Joe Mauer,
Joe Mauer became
another
the face of the
first-year Hall of
franchise
Famer.
he grew up watching. During his 15-year career, he made 6 All-Star teams, winning 5 Silver Slugger Awards and 3 Gold Gloves behind the plate. In 2006, he became the first catcher to win.
So we have 2
title
first-year
in 60
Hall of
years.
Famers.
He would go on to
I think the
win
last time that
2
happened was
more
2019,
back-to-back
off the top of
seasons
my
in
head.
2008 and 2009. In 2009, he led the major leagues with a .365 batting average and a .444 on-base percentage, and was the American League
So I'm
leader
assuming they're gonna go
with a
Todd Helton
.587
next as
slugging
well.
percentage, all en route to being named the AL's most valuable player. He topped AL catchers in fielding percentage 3 times and caught stealing percentage twice, ranking 9th all-time with a .995 career fielding mark. On 4 different occasions, he helped his team to the postseason, and tonight he becomes a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Joe Mauer
Joe
is a Hall of
Mauer,
Famer.
welcome to Cooperstown.
That's awesome. A first ballot Hall of Famer at that.
And our third and final member of
Okay,
the class
it
of
is only 3.
2024 played his entire 17-year career
in
while
Colorado.
wearing number 17 for the Colorado Rockies.
So it's
Today,
Beltre,
Todd Helton,
it's Maurer,
member of the
and it's
National
Todd
Baseball
Helton.
Hall of Fame.
It's kind of exactly how I thought it would be.
Five-time All-Star,
Unfortunately, it sounds
he
like
had
Billy Wagner
316
just
with
missed.
2,519 hits,
But Todd Helton, this one
369
feels
home
good
runs,
because
593
it's good to see a guy that you spend so
20th
much
best
time
mark of all
campaigning
time.
for finally make it. You know, Todd Helton was one of the first bubble cases that we did, Chris and I, in 2021. We knew back then that he was Hall of Fame worthy, and he made quite a remarkable climb over the years. You know, he just kept going and going and going ever since Larry Walker got elected in 2020. I'm going to turn this off now so I'm not talking over them, but Todd Helton started, I believe he debuted at 16.9% of the ballot in his first year. We got to get the full results. I'm sure Thibodeau is going to have them momentarily. I'm very intrigued to see what they are, but yeah. Billy Wagner. Oh, here we go. We got the results. I'll pause for a second. All right. Adrian Beltre gets in with 95.1%. Todd Helton gets in at 79.7%. That is a 7% increase from the last year. Joe Mauer gets in at 76.1%. He made it by, I think, 5 votes in total. Billy Wagner, 284 votes. That's an estimated 4 votes he missed by, 73.8%. That is brutal. That is devastating. But he's going to get the 10th year boost next year. Gary Sheffield finishes his last year at 63.9%. Unfortunately, he's going to fall off the ballot after this year. Andrew Jones gets 61.6%. I like that a lot for him. I think that's going to be a good place to maybe make a jump to 75 from next year. Andrew Jones finishing at 61.6%. Carlos Beltran finishing at 57.1%. Pretty steep drop-off from the pre-election vote to the post-election vote, but nonetheless, that is an 11% gain, or a 10.5% gain, and that is also the most of the highest gain of any returning candidate, I'm going to go ahead and assume, because Gary Sheffield only went up by 8.9%, I believe. Alex Rodriguez, 34.8%. Manny Ramirez, 32.5%. Chase Utley, oh, that is a disappointing debut, 28.8%. So the post-election vote must have really disliked Chase Utley because he was around, or what was he at? He was at 39.4%, so that is over 10% decrease. Wow. But nonetheless, still not a bad debut on a stacked ballot like this one. He's going to gain a lot of votes next year. I feel pretty confident. Omar Vizquel, 17.7. Bobby Abreu, 14.8. That is a slight drop. Jimmy Rollins, 14.8. Andy Pettit, 13.5. Mark Burley, 8.3. Francisco Rodriguez, 7.8. That's a 3% drop for him. Torrey Hunter gets 7.3%. He does stay on the ballot. One of my hot takes is that he was going to fall off. And David Wright is going to stay on the ballot at 6.2%. He got 4 votes over the necessary amount. The only guys that didn't get a single vote were Jose Reyes and James Shields. Everyone else got at least 1. Matt Holliday got 4. That's 1%. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough to keep him on. That's a really tough one and done for him. Billy Wagner, oh man, that is devastating. He missed by 4 votes, I think, if I have it correct. Yeah, 4 votes. Yeah, he got 73.8%. Anyway, going back into Todd Helton, he debuted, I believe, at 16.9%. And he kind of just kept climbing and climbing from there. And, this is really the only, sort of rags to riches type of Hall of Fame case we have this year because the other 2 were first ballot. But nonetheless, after Larry Walker got in and that, that glass ceiling of Coors Field players was lifted, the sky was a limit for Todd Helton, and he got in his 6th year on the ballot. Again, almost 80% of the vote when he eventually got in. So that is a very strong and very good Hall of Fame performance from him. Year 6, and he gets in. So I'll start this by just talking about Adrian Beltre, right? Because he was the clearest case on this ballot. He gets 95.1% of the vote. When I was growing up, my introduction to Adrian Beltre was when he was on the Red Sox, and he was the best player on the Red Sox that year, and they let him go. They let him walk in for agency, which to 10-year-old me just didn't feel right. I didn't really understand the whole concept. Billy Wagner fell 5 votes short. Yeah, that's tough. Anyway, going back to Adrian Beltre, it never made sense to me why the Red Sox let him go. And he went out and proved it with the Rangers. The fact that he is presumably going into the Hall of Fame with the Rangers, considering he played the back half of his career there, and he also had, clear Hall of Fame seasons in both LA and Seattle, is kind of wild to me. I mean, he played his best years in many respects were in Texas from age 32 to age 39. It felt like he just never stopped performing. He put up an OPS plus of at least 125 in 6 of his 8 seasons in Texas, and his last season in 2018, he only had a 99 OPS plus. His drop-off wasn't even that severe. He was also one of the best defenders ever at the position, 27 career D-WAR. Obviously contributes to his 93.5 career total wins above replacement. So, it is pretty remarkable how much he just kept going. It felt like age just wasn't a thing for him. He was playing like he was 25 years old for the better part of 20 years, all of those years with the Rangers. He was such a tremendous third baseman, and I mean, like I mentioned, he had Hall of Fame caliber seasons in LA. He had a 163 OPS plus and finished second in the MVP voting in 2004 to only Barry Bonds in the greatest year ever played. He was a great defender. He was a great hitter. And yeah, the clearest Hall of Fame case there was. 95% even feels kind of low, to be honest, but I guess the post-election vote wasn't a huge fan, I guess. But Todd Helton, 79.7%. He is the single most important and the single best player in the history of the Colorado Rockies. And I know that comes with a caveat because the Rockies only existed for a little over 30 years now. But, that means something. He stayed there his entire career. He was a Hall of Fame caliber hitter. I mean, no doubt about it. A 953 OPS, a 133 OPS plus. Cores or not, a 133 OPS plus is a Hall of Famer in almost 10,000 career plate appearances. I was getting into baseball at the very tail end of his career, so I didn't get too much of him to watch. But looking back, he was just such a remarkable hitter, especially in the early 2000s. From 2000 to 2004, he had a 148 OPS plus at least every season, and he had a 160 OPS plus in the other 4. So, and that's OPS plus, which accounts for the fact that he played in Coors Field for all those years. He's a guy that means so much to Colorado. He was there in their not their championship season, their pennant season in 2007. And it feels good to see a climb like this. It feels good to see for guys that like Chase Utley that just debuted at 28%. Todd Helton, who's a Hall of Famer, debuted at 16%. So, it feels good to see that someone can rise from 16 to 75 to 79 even in just 6 years. That's kind of a sign, I think, that the writers are getting better at this. I know that a lot of people love to say mean things about the BBWAA during November through January, and understandably so, but I think it's very necessary to understand that they are doing a much better job at this, because the fact of the matter is 16 to 79 was not usually a thing, especially in a 6-year period. That was like a 10-year thing in previous years. So to see Todd Helton make that rise, and to just keep climbing year after year after year since 2021, it's indicative of the fact that people are getting smarter. One thing that I'd like to note, Todd Helton presumably only got in by a handful of votes. The first-year voters dominate this ballot every single year. They did they single-handedly got Scott Rowland in last year. They played a large role in getting Todd Helton in this year because he had, I believe, 12 out of 13 first-year votes. And that, conglomerate is going to only make up more and more of the voter base as these years go on. So, I think there's a lot of good progress to be made in the BBWAA. They do a good job with the younger voters, who are more open to a big haul. And, I think that's a large part of the reason why Todd Helton got here, all the first-year votes over the years. So Todd Helton is a Hall of Famer. Very happy for him. Very, very happy for him. And then lastly, Joe Mauer, a first-year candidate. He definitely, I think his first-year candidacy surprised a lot of people, but he kind of confirms my belief that the BBWAA loves voting for catchers. They absolutely love to vote for catchers. They voted for Mike Piazza in his 4th year on a loaded ballot with PED suspensions. They voted for Pudge Rodriguez over Vladimir Guerrero in both of their first years, and they voted for Joe Mauer in his first year, despite him only being a catcher for half of his career. So, it's pretty remarkable. Again, a guy that meant so much to his team. He's a native of Minnesota. He played for the Twins his entire career, and it just, he's one of those guys where, like, it doesn't feel right to imagine him on another team. Like I said, the hometown guy. He was in his prime. There was a very brief period where Joe Mauer was like the catcher equivalent of Tony Gwynn. He won 3 batting titles. He didn't strike out. He was one of the best pure hitters in the league, for people that like to use that sort of terminology. But his 2009 season is among the best offensive seasons ever put up by a catcher. He hit like 365, I think it was, and had an OPS over 1,000. Yeah, 365. We were 1031 OPS, a 171 OPS plus, and 606 plate appearances in 2009. Yeah, a guy who won an MVP. And it just feels good to see him make it into the first year. Like I said, the BBWA loves catchers, and they're proving it again here with Joe Mauer. So I'd like to now talk about next year's ballot, because we have 2 very good first years. I think there's going to be at least, ideally 3 guys that make it next year between Ichiro, who is going to be an easy first-year candidate, CeCe Sabathia, who I think will take kind of the Joe Mauer role of being like a sneaky first-year candidate, and then Billy Wagner was only 5 votes short. So, I do believe he'll get the 10th-year push, because more, people, the writers love giving people a big push in their 10th year. They did it to Larry Walker. They got him from 54% in 2018 or 2019 to 76% in 2020. They gave it to Edgar Martinez. They gave it to Fred McGriff, even if he wasn't going to get in. They gave it to Jeff Kent last year. They gave it to Gary Sheffield last year. Sheffield had the 2nd highest year-to-year gain of any returning candidate. So, yeah, that's so they're going to give him the push, and more importantly, I think very few writers, if any, are going to drop him. Billy Wagner had 3 pre-election writers drop him from their ballots this year. That's the kind of difference that a single vote makes, right? And 10th-year candidates usually don't have guys drop them. Gary Sheffield, I don't think had a single drop this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Gary Sheffield had 0 drops pre-election this year. Jeff Kent had very few last year. I know that Larry Walker had exactly 1, and it was Peter Gammons. Edgar Martinez had very few. Fred McGriff had very few. So drops are ideally not a thing that people need to worry about in their 10th year when they're that close. So Billy Wagner, really wish he could have made it this year, but I am not worried at all about his case for next year. And you also have some interesting cases like Dustin Pedroia. You have Felix Hernandez. You have Ian Kinsler. And additionally, you're going to have some cases from guys like Brian McCann, Russell Martin, some F4 compilers because of defense at the catcher position. You might get some Sabre votes out of them. But overall, I think next year is going to be a fun year, and this year absolutely delivered. I mean, I was very excited for this year for a long time, and I think it was for very good reason. So I think that's all I have to say. This was a nice half episode, 25 minutes by myself. If I'm going to do that, this is the topic for me to do it for. So if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And we will see you later this week.
This conversation
is over.